Hey everybody, this is Matt and Jake. We're here to talk about the new Old Republic novel written by Drew Karpyshyn, entitled simply Revan. And we're going to give all of our thoughts on the book, positive and negative views. And if you really don't want any spoilers, you should really postpone this review and come back another time after you've read the book. And if you haven't played Knights of the Old Republic and you're watching this, then it won't mean much to you at all. Jake, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to talk about this book without actually giving stuff away because it's so intertwined with the two previous reiterations of it in the game and then also the future one. So I would recommend, unless, I mean, some people might not want to read the book at all and just know what happened. So if you want to know that, I guess they can listen. But yeah, I agree. So
Okay. So, I suppose we should preface this by just saying, in case people don't know, that like the sort of canonical ending to Knights of the Old Republic is the light side ending, where you, as the player character, who is revealed to be the former Sith Lord, Darth Revan, defeats his former apprentice Darth Malak aboard the space station known as the Starforge, destroys it, ends up saving the Republic, and is redeemed by turning back to the light side of the Force. And after that, this book takes place. Is it 2 or 3 years afterward?
I think it's 2 years afterwards.
2 years, and basically, the structure of the book sort of centers itself around three main characters, beginning with Revan and his life that he's led with Bastila Shan, his love interest from the first game. And they're no longer really a big part of the Jedi Order, I suppose you could say. I mean, they're at odds with the Council over a lot of the events that transpired. Revan's teachings are seen still as something sort of heretical, but at the same time the Council doesn't feel comfortable banning him from the Order because he's a symbol to the galaxy. And the book basically takes the form of Revan searching for his past memories in order to figure out what's lurking on the edges of known space out there, which, of course, with the advent of the MMO is revealed to be the Sith Empire. But so, any thoughts on that? Like, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I think even before, like, just going into that, you could even think about just sort of people's expectations coming into these novels, because just even going off that, so, like, we know what happens in Knights of the Old Republic, and it sort of just ends with a storybook ending where, you know, you just kind of see stuff being destroyed, and Revan, you know, you're just kind of like, yay, I saved the day.
Yeah, it's basically...
You kind of just sort of make up what you think happened.
Yeah, it's sort of basically like the end of A New Hope if the other two movies hadn't happened, is like where the first game ended.
Yeah, so coming into this novel, the first thing, the biggest complaint, and I'll just, you know, we'll just sort of talk about this right away, that I heard from people was, where is everybody? Although it starts with Revan, and you see Canderous pretty quickly, but straight from the get-go, you don't get the whole crew back, and this is something I just really quickly want to argue about, not argue about, but argue against, which was everyone, you know, like coming into this novel, with how the story is being set up, the whole point of it is it's supposed to be setting up what the fate of Revan is, right?
Right.
I mean, that's, like, when you come into this novel, that's what you're expecting, right? You're expecting to find out what the heck happened to Revan in the past, you know, before him and Malak turned to the dark side, why they turned to the dark side, and then finding out what he's going to do about it. And that's why he's having the dreams.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, a whole bunch of people were really upset that, you know, Carthanasi isn't mentioned in the novel at all, that HK-47 is mentioned, but you don't actually see him. You know, Zalbar and Mission are mentioned, but you don't see them. And to me, like, those arguments just don't make that much sense to me, you know, just from the get-go, just because this is a whole different story. It's not, this isn't supposed to be about Revan or Knights of the Old Republic 1.5. It's supposed to be like a sort of like almost a prologue, I was thinking, even to the book Deceived.
Yeah.
Just because you kind of get a sense of who the heck this Emperor is and stuff like that. So I just kind of want, I mean, I don't know how you feel about that.
I will say that
I was sort of
Yeah,
bugged by
I
it.
will say that while it doesn't bother me at all that characters like HK-47, Jolie, and Juhani, so forth, aren't actually making appearances here, it did sort of pop up a question in my mind, like, well, why didn't he even mention Karth? But at the same time, I didn't like... Just drop my mic there. I'll edit that out. Yeah, anyway, yeah, that was for dramatic effect, everybody. I meant to do that.
Yeah. Exactly.
It didn't bother me that much, but at the same time, I can see like why people ask the question. But I do agree that it's a news story, and so many people just seem to want like a whole, another quest for the Ebon Hawk's crew to go on, and it wasn't about that, and I understand that, but and I think coming to that, like one of the plot points about this book, that the only reason why, aside from T3M4, the only reason why Canderous is the one who joins him is because it sort of explains like how he became Mandalore, which we knew happened from Knights of the Old Republic 2. And it also explains like their Mandalorian sort of resurgence that we know about because they're like a major force or whatever in the MMO. So it sort of like stages the beginnings of that. So I understand like why it happened. I wouldn't call it like that wasn't one of my personal disappointments though.
Yeah. I don't know, like, I actually thought I liked that, kind of. I mean, the whole part when, Canderous says, I'm Mandalore the Preserver, or whatever, and then he puts it on, I was like, that's kind of epic, but the lead up to it wasn't, like, the strongest. But it did have a point in the plot in which Revan was trying to find out what his memories are all about, and what lies beyond, the...
Sort of out in the unknown regions.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out exactly what it's called, but where Dromund Kaas is, I mean, where all those planets are that the Republic doesn't really know about. So, it has a purpose. And I mean, that's another thing about this novel is that I was really surprised about, actually, was that it ties in Knights of the Old Republic 2 with Knights of the Old Republic 1. Like, I never thought he was going to do that, because I thought Knights of the Old Republic 2 was kind of considered as a minor nuisance by BioWare. Like, that's kind of the impression I got, because they never talk about it. So this book definitely proved me wrong. Lots of Knights of Republic 2 stuff.
I suppose you kind of had to... It was either going to be like the game was going to be completely non-canon, or you had to sort of include if you want to call it an ending from the second game, which it wasn't really. I had to sort of like address what happened there. But I suppose like what you could say, like you were saying earlier, that it's sort of like a prologue to something like Deceived and, by extension, the MMO. I suppose you could say that the game, or the book rather, sort of serves two purposes. It definitely explains in clear detail, what Revan was up to in these years, but it also provided a lot of exposition about the structure of the Sith Empire.
Yes, and I think that's probably... I felt like half the book is introducing you to what happens to Revan, and then also, excuse me, sort of getting people more interested in the Empire's, like, everything about the Empire, really. I mean, the social aspect of the differences between the Empire and Republic. It actually focuses heavily on that, and I think for obvious reasons, because when you get into the MMO, it's like night and day if you play as Empire or Republic, and I actually thought it was done pretty well, but I think this is also one of the big complaints coming in this book, is none other than Lord Scourge, which is the best name ever, obviously. Savage Opresses, like,
the one thing
or something, I don't know. Oh gosh.
Yeah, the one thing you could say about that is that the characters in the novel themselves address that it's a ridiculous name. It doesn't really cover it up. Yes, Darth Scourge. See, the thing is,
it makes it worse if you think about it. Just making fun of your own book. It doesn't make sense.
I think they're running out of... You do run out of Darth names at a certain point. I guess you'd have to be like Darth Maul 2.0 or something like that, because how many words are there that you can use?
I think I mean, just because based on the ending of this book, I would have to say that the reason why he had that was because some other writer at BioWare decided that in the game his name was going to be Lord Scourge or Scourge or whatever, and so Revan was like, I mean, excuse me, did I just call Drew Carpathian Revan? Anyways,
I think you did.
I think Drew Carpathian. Yeah, I think I did. I think Drew just decided, okay, well, whatever, I'll just go with it. And maybe he was even just making fun of it. But at the same time, Drew was also helping writing the Jedi Knight, Jedi Knight storyline, which is the main storyline. Which actually, this book almost ties into the Jedi Knight storyline for the Republic,
I think,
the Old Republic, because of Lord Scourge, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah,
but yeah,
but I mean, while he's not an incredibly the things that happen to him are interesting, of course, but he's not an incredibly interesting character to get inside the mind of. I didn't find him exceptionally interesting or engaging, but at the same time, I really liked reading his story just because sort of like the politics involved with like the Sith Lords on the Dark Council and their minions, you know, impeding his progress and stuff like that. The environment of the Sith Empire was just more interesting to read about, considering that the sort of the slow build-up of Revan's story with the Mandalorian search and all that. But so I liked that was in there, but also it's the fact that I think like either an equal amount of time or maybe even a greater amount of time is spent on Darth Scourge's tale than Revan's, or as Revan's. So I think maybe the novel might be something of a... It might be a little bit like misnamed, or like the title maybe should have been...
I 100% agree
I think the novel should have been called something more like The Old Republic in the Unknown Regions, or Revan in the Unknown Regions, or The Old Republic Revelations, or Revelations Past and Future, or something like that. Because Revan... It's like he's overemphasized in the title to sell more copies or to make people go, yes, this is what I've been waiting for, and it's not really all about him in any sense.
Yeah. It really isn't. I mean, like, I guess for me, I kind of already expected this book to be more of just setting up for the Old Republic, so I didn't know how Carpathian was going to do it. All I knew was that somehow, I mean, first of all, this is like 1,000 years before even the Old Republic takes place, right? So even beforehand, I'm already thinking, okay, well, we know that something's going to happen to Revan because it just, like, something's going to have to happen, because we know he's going to somehow face the Emperor or something. Like, even before I read the book, I knew that somehow he was going to face the Emperor and something was going to go down, and the Emperor is still alive in the Old Republic 1,000 years later, so nothing's really going to change that much. I mean... And so I guess I could see the difficulty for Drew Carpathian to really figure out like a point to write this book. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's why Lord Scourge, or whatever his name is, I think that's the reason why he becomes more of the focus of the story, because Revan isn't really relevant, you know, 1,000 years later. I mean, of course he has he's legendary and he's iconic to both Sith and to you know, the Republic and Jedi, but at the same time, I mean, like, what is Revan really going to do then that's going to change a lot? And the way, in my opinion, the way that I just almost called Drew Revan again, the way that Drew sets up the way that he sets up how Revan eventually affects the Emperor was fascinating to me, only because it wasn't really about, like, this is one of the things I liked about the book. It was more, like, the book was more talking about the dark side and light side of things, and what the Emperor actually is, and contemplating that. So here's the thing about Lord Scourge. The first, like, half of the book, I found him, just like you, I thought he was kind of uninteresting, and I thought, like, okay, he's just a typical Sith. And one of the things I did like, though, about this, especially the first part of the book, was the paranoia that you feel, like, especially in the Bane novels, amongst different Sith, where they're always paranoid about, you know, someone wanting to kill them or something. Like, I really liked that. But the thing I liked about Lord Scourge, whatever his name is, was when he talks to Revan. Even though it is short, and I wish it would have been a little more, like, I wish they would have, like, I wish, first of all, the biggest problem with this book is that it's not long enough. It should have been
Yeah.
like 400 pages, and then he should have developed characters a little more. Even though we've already developed, Revan and even the Exile, which I guess we have to talk about soon too, in the other games. You can debate how much you have to develop them more, but I'm just saying, like, I think that's why a lot of time is spent on Lord Scourge, because the characters already know who Revan is. Everyone thinks they're Revan. Everyone knows what Revan's story is. So, setting up Lord Scourge to be, first of all, he's a different Sith. He's not like the normal Sith you've ever read about. And to me, I found that fascinating, especially just the conversations he had, with Revan, because he's really debating inside himself what is the right thing to do, and I found that really interesting.
Yeah, I liked that aspect.
I
like, I suppose we should talk about this, like the whole idea, because people are expecting spoilers. The whole idea that like the Dark Council at that time was trying to like bring down the Sith Emperor rather than taking, directive from him was interesting. Before you even knew why, it was just like, oh, okay, so that's interesting right there. But, what is it about this particular Sith Emperor that makes him so, mistrusted by his followers and such? And I think that Scourge being, like, even in like, sort of the hierarchy, even being below, like, a level of the Dark Council, it really increased the paranoia, because you didn't know... You were, like, right along with him. You didn't know which path was the right one for him to take in order to... just betterment of the Sith Empire for his own personal well-being. Either way, you didn't know which one was going to work out for him, and you also didn't know whether it was going to work out for him. He could have died, I suppose. You didn't really know where Drew was going with his character, I don't think, until like towards the end of the book. But even then, there was a bit of a twist.
Yeah. The twist ending, I thought, was... Well, maybe we'll just get to that a little later, but the lead up to it was pretty interesting. I think another thing that I did like about this book especially was the Jedi Exile. I kind of felt like she didn't have that much of a personality sometimes. Like, she was just kind of like, except when she was on the planet, which was destroyed by the Emperor. Then she's like, okay, I'm gonna die. Like, it feels more humanistic, where it's like, you kind of feel like, is she gonna die? You're kind of wondering, like, is she gonna die? Just like go insane or something? When I was reading that, it kind of got my blood pumping. And then of course she doesn't, because she's a heroine, so she's not going to die. But I liked, I guess one thing, because it's surprising that KOTOR 2 was in there, but just putting the Exile in there, and then also I don't know if this is finally confirming, but kind of confirming that the Exile is a lady, and I like that a lot too, just because there aren't enough female protagonists in Star Wars, I don't think. So I really liked her being a girl. So, and I liked her character. I liked her background and her involvement with Revan. I thought it was kind of corny when Bastila was like jealous of her. I was like, what? Like, those parts were really dumb. I didn't see that. For some reason, I don't know if you agree with me, but the one thing that Drew Karpyshyn does not know how to write is romance. Because he doesn't include it that much in his books, but when he does, it usually turns out to be really blunt and just like really corny.
I haven't read like his Mass Effect books, so I don't know if he's done it there too. But you don't really run into it. Yeah, okay. You don't really run into it a whole lot in like things like Darth Bane, because you're dealing with mostly Sith Lords who don't have time for that kind of nonsense. But I felt from the beginning that he had just a better knack for writing darker characters and sort of anti-heroes than with Revan, because it was sort of like, granted it was harder for him to figure out where he was going with this novel, but it was also like, it just wasn't quite as interesting because Revan is he's a good protagonist, and so it's sort of like one thing I did like about like the way he wrote the characters though was like he makes Revan sarcastic and he gives him personality, and it feels like he's a character who's lived through something rather than he's just another tranquil Jedi master or whatever. He's interesting to read about, and he feels like he has gone through the events of the first game that would change a person. So that worked out, but yeah, the romance was a little silly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, the thing about Revan, I think that really gets people is the same thing that, interests people in, like, Jolie Bindo, is the fact that Revan isn't really a Jedi anymore, and he's definitely not a Sith, but he's totally like a gray Jedi, and he's sort of just does stuff on his own, and it makes him more compelling, more interesting to, and maybe this is just something in, like, all of Star Wars. Like, to me, the most interesting Jedi are people like Luke Skywalker, who have to figure out stuff for their own, and then, Revan, who also, he kind of has to figure out stuff for his own. Like, characters like that, and then Quinlan Vos, just characters who just become more independent, and they have different ideas than, like you were saying, like the traditional monk, sort of sterile, creepy, Jedis that don't have any personality. So, and of course, that only came with the prequel trilogy. That wasn't something, and that's why I like Luke Skywalker so much, because, like, usually when I talk to people, especially when they're younger, when I talk to people that are younger, they're like, I don't like Luke Skywalker. I was actually talking to someone the other day. I don't like Luke Skywalker because he's kind of a baby, and I was like, what do you mean he's a baby? And I don't know if that's the exact words they use, but usually when people see Luke Skywalker, he's not as tough as Anakin, who just frowns and just beats people up because he's a Jedi. It's like that doesn't make sense. That's not the point.
I mean, it's a completely other subject, but that's ridiculous. Because it's just like, even like a character like what's it that a book you and Tim review, Yoda Dark Rendezvous, a character like Scout, who has like unusual limitations and such, makes her a much more interesting character to read about because of that. It's sort of like it's just more interesting to read about characters who aren't just so tranquil and easygoing, or not easygoing, but just linear.
And I think it does kind of apply to this book, because I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why maybe we don't like Lord Scourge as much, because he's kind of a cookie-cutter Sith in the beginning. He's not anything different. The thing, and this is something that's been in writing for hundreds of years, is the most interesting characters are the ones with flaws, and the ones you don't know what's going to happen to them, and that's how twist endings come out. And usually, Drew Karpyshyn can write pretty swell novels like that. And I mean, another great character to talk about is someone like Bastila, someone who, switches her alliances for certain complex reasons because she's flawed. So that's what makes it interesting. And I think maybe that is part of the problem in this book, is no one's going to switch their ground, and the only person that seems like they might sort of switch is Lord Scourge, and maybe that's why he kind of interests me, because in the end, he has a choice to make, and he ends up choosing something, but at least he debated it, and at least there was some type of, philosophy behind it, and his, and there was, at least you could understand his thinking throughout the novel. I thought Karpyshyn did a pretty decent job of it.
I liked that.
But then again, it goes back. Sorry.
Go ahead. I mean, you can. Okay. I mean, I liked that the way. I also liked the reasons why he was, debating these decisions with his head, and like the sort of the dilemma there was that it was all about sort of the iffy nature, the dubious aspect of Force visions, and that they don't always go the way you think they might. And so it's like one, because that goes back to like, the better Star Wars movies, like Empire Strikes Back with Yoda talking about the Force and stuff like that. And two, because that's sort of like we mentioned this earlier, it's really ultimately what leads into the story of like the Jedi Knight later on in for the MMO. Like sort of what drives him to make the decision that he makes.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, once again, people are coming into this novel thinking, and I mean, yes, the novel might be misnamed, but at the same time, it was pretty clear, at least in my opinion, that he was writing a novel for the Old Republic, not for Knights of the Old Republic, for the Old Republic. So what I expected was, I expected that he was going to explain some stuff leading into the game, so that way we wouldn't be lost in the dark, when dealing with this Emperor guy that we don't know that much about. And I thought he did a pretty decent job of it. I mean, I think all in all, you know, the book itself, is anything poorly written about it, or is it just disappointment from people not, you know, getting what they wanted?
Well,
I mean,
see,
I don't know.
here's the other
I'm not
thing,
sure.
because you know, I've got like that. I haven't done one in a long time, but I have like the Versus series, where I pit like two characters against each other, and I talk about like their stats and consider who I would win in like a hypothetical duel. And the thing with Revan is
I think I see where you're
so
going
many
with this,
people are so attached to that character that they just sort of have ideas that to characters like Yoda, for example, who they just go like he's got like godlike powers that you just can't even comprehend. And I think that the fact that the book gave Revan definite limits, sort of, I don't know if it's like disappointment is the right word, or maybe I think it just angered people. But it's like I think that's silly, because when there's no limits, then there's no jeopardy and there's no excitement, and also because it makes the character more, it makes the threat of the Sith Emperor more real when it's somebody who is actually dangerous.
Yeah. And you see, I 100% agree. Like, to me, that's the brilliant part about this book, if I may say, because here's the thing with Darth Revan. I was even talking to people about this too. Darth Revan isn't known for being a super powerful Dark Lord. That's not the point of Revan. And people just seem to miss the story aspect completely. They see a really cool looking Sith wearing a mask that looks awesome, and they're like, oh, that guy can beat Darth Bane just because he looks cool. And it's like, no, okay, this that's not what it's about, you know. And I was like just saying the stuff like, I don't think Darth Revan could even beat like Mace Windu if you're gonna, you know, because I was actually thinking about your Versus series. And I was just thinking like, I don't think he could beat Mace Windu. And this is my personal stuff. I don't think he could beat Yoda. I don't think he could beat Luke Skywalker. Like that's not what the point of Revan is. The point of Revan is his redemption story, and how that whole plot twist in the Knights of the Republic was just so brilliantly woven. Yeah, that's what makes Revan awesome.
I mean,
not his power.
Right. I mean, he was a Dark Lord of the Sith, not just another Sith Lord. So obviously he's got sizable power. But the thing that everyone talked about with him was that what made him so threatening and scary was that he was smarter than everybody. Like, his tactics were what were winning the war and things like that. And so, to me, it's like the fact that you give him limits is fine. And it's also, the way he's portrayed in the novel, he does things like he redirects Force Lightning, which is something you see people like Yoda doing. So he's clearly not like a pushover. He's just not... He's not like this outlandishly powerful figure that I think everybody expects that he is or wants him to be. He's not. He's just not. And it makes the Sith Emperor a lot more dangerous.
Yeah. To be fair, though, in one aspect, though, I think the one part that people were annoyed about, which I'm not that much annoyed about, but I don't know how you feel, was how when Revan and Malak went to go face the Emperor, he just overwhelmed their minds, and
that doesn't bother me.
Basically forced them. Yeah, and here's the reason it doesn't bother me that much is because first of all, once again, like you were saying, it just reinstates how powerful the Emperor is, which is awesome to me, because when I'm playing the Old Republic, I want to beat somebody who is better than Revan. You know, that's interesting to me, because it just, I don't know, it just appeals to me more. He's more powerful, he's more menacing, and in the book it describes him mostly as a monster. He's not even really, I don't even know what his race is. I don't remember if it was Sith pureblood or human or what he is, but it just, to me, the whole idea of the Emperor is interesting to me. He is what Darth Nihilus should have been in KOTOR 2, which was this embodiment of the dark side of the Force, which makes him a monster, a mindless being who only, you know, hungers for the dark side of the Force. So the thing that makes it so interesting to me and doesn't bother me so much is the fact that afterwards Revan and Malak were the only people to break his hold, which has never happened before. I really thought that was awesome. Like, so that does make Revan powerful, you know?
I completely agree.
He wasn't overwhelmed.
Right, I mean, it's like, it doesn't... That was the other thing, like, details of the novel were leaked, like, a couple months before it was released, and everyone was just talking about how, like, it was going to completely retcon the whole series, and it changed the reason for Malak and Revan doing everything that they did. And it's like, well, not not really, because they turn against the Sith Emperor and just go out for themselves. And you know, I feel like they're legitimate. They were legitimate Sith Lords in their own right at that point. It's just the initial reason for them. Even in the lore of the game, it was always that something out there corrupted them, and that nobody knew what it was. So that didn't bother me at all.
Yeah, that was my biggest argument about it, was like people like, oh, and like it's ruining their saga. And I'm like, you realize that in the original game, before this even came out, that it was already established that something more powerful than anything in the galaxy had manipulated Revan and Malak. You understand that, right? And then people are like, oh, well, like they would just kind of avoid the subject. And I'm like, okay, so based on that fact, because you love the game so much and you read this book, what is the difference? Like, what are you trying to argue about? And then, and even going beyond that, so like, let's even take a step further. So let's say, when he actually confronts the Emperor, which he knows is more powerful than him, so him in the exile, and Lord Scourge doesn't really, but him in the exile confront him, and they're putting up quite a fight with him. It's not like the Emperor can't overwhelm him anymore, because he knows what to expect now, and he knows how to break his hold. So he's fighting the Emperor. It's a pretty big fight. I mean, it's not like, I mean, he does get overwhelmed in the end, but it's not like once again, he's not freaking Mace Windu or Luke Skywalker when he's like knows every single lightsaber form. It's not that's not who Darth Revan is. So even with knowing those facts from people that actually care about this stuff, why, like, what is disappointing about that? I mean, I don't, like, it doesn't really make sense to me, and that's why it bothers me.
To me, it makes the Emperor that much more dangerous, like we keep saying, but also, I can't even count the amount of times in the original Knights of the Old Republic where people said that both Revan and Darth Malak were once great Jedi in every sense of the word. Like, two of the most prominent Jedi Knights of that time, like the incorruptible heroes. So for something to turn people like that to the dark side, it makes them, a huge force to be dealt with. So in the fact that just Revan and the Exile put up such a good fight in the end, is like, well, that was fine. Yeah, I thought it was a good climax, but again, I think everyone was just too attached to this notion that Revan's something else entirely without limits, and they're just put off by that. But I think they just need to get over it, really.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, and it's like,
go ahead.
What if I would have used, if I would have used, like, for instance, what if the Emperor, let's just say in the book, this obviously doesn't happen, but it was like, oh, it's the resurrected Naga Sadow, no one would even argue, because if you go back in history, you know that Naga Sadow and some of these Sith were so powerful they could, like, blow up suns, right? And so all of a sudden they introduced this super powerful Sith Lord, who, by the way, I think was alive at the same time as Naga Sadow and those guys. So he's already comparable to these Sith Lords. He's pretty much immortal. He can't die. And this has been established even before the Old Republic came out. What do you expect? I mean, I don't care if it's Revan. I don't care what Jedi or what Sith you throw against him. He's supposed to be, once again, a monster, and just this huge, powerful force that isn't taken lightly. And that's like, what did they want? I don't understand. Did people just want Darth Revan to throw his lightsaber at him and then have him die? I mean, I don't.
Yeah, So I just think people's expectations are outlandish, and also, like you just said, I mean, this is a guy who, I mean, let's just talk about this. Like, he's got a Dark Council, which is basically like an anti-Jedi council, so there's like 12 members, I think, and I think, excluding like 2 of them who die in other instances, I think he kills all of them himself, right? Like, that's what Scourge said. So he killed 10... He killed the 10 most powerful Sith Lords of that time by himself. You're not gonna just throw a lightsaber at him.
But for some reason, Revan should be able to kill him in like 5 seconds.
Yeah, it's like that's. It's just.
It doesn't make sense.
I don't see the purpose of that, but it's what people. It's just the way people are, I guess. But so I guess we should talk about just like in general, like the plot of the book is sort of like Revan goes looking for memories. He thinks that finding a Mandalorian, or the helmet of Mandalore, will, sort of reinstate some of his lost memories so that he can get a better idea of of the missing chunks of from his memory. And he brings Candace along with him for obvious reasons. Yeah. And so I thought this was interesting too. Was it sort of explained, like when we go on that journey and they finally find the mask? It explained the whole reasoning behind the Mandalorian Wars in the first place.
Yeah, which makes sense to me. Like, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, because personally, I have to admit, I never really even thought about it like that. You know, it was just like, well, they're Mandalorians, so they attacked the Republic, right?
Yeah.
And there's even a question, because I just recently replayed Knights of the Old Republic, where I think Revan asked Candace about, like, the Mandalore's reasoning for doing it, and Candace couldn't really say.
Yeah.
Because I think it wasn't like he was being cagey about answering, he just didn't know the answer.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, it explained that sort of question, in that the Mandalorian Wars themselves were sort of a test by the Sith Emperor to test the resolve and strength of the Republic forces before he made his move.
Yeah, and like everything about that to me, I think is really smartly written. Like, I personally feel like they've tied really well, and I was very nervous about this going into the Old Republic. I was like, how much are they going to disregard in the older games, and how much are they going to explain? You know, are they just going to like totally, you know, forget about it? But they haven't. BioWare has been faithful once again to the fans, and they've, especially in the game, if you played the game yet, in the beta or anything, you'll realize there's a lot to like about it in terms of, you know, nostalgia from, you know, the Old Republic, and even Knights of the Old Republic, and even Knights of the Old Republic 2, and like just like everything that ties in story-wise with the Mandalorians, and the Emperor and the Sith in general just makes sense to me. I don't know how else I would have done it. I can't think of anything better way to explain what they've done so far.
Yeah, I really liked that whole, you know, setup, that whole scenario. And it was a nice surprise, because I wasn't even expecting, because to me that was never a question in my mind. Again, it was like I never wondered why the Mandalorians attacked. But the fact that he created like a whole other, history lesson out of it is great. And so we sort of, I guess you want to discuss where Candace leaves off? Like his sort of business with his wife?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I thought that part was really interesting in the story. The only thing that I thought was I didn't really care that she died. Like, what happens is, Revan sends Candace to go find out some more stuff, like we were talking about earlier, about maybe his memory, see if he can find out where the mask is. And I guess, the purpose of that, obviously, is so that, because Revan's trying to rediscover more of his memories. And so eventually him and Candace end up going alone to find the Ordo clan, which is, Candace's people. And they're all on this snowy planet, I believe, which is where all the Mandalorians believe the Mask of Mandalore is. First clan to claim the Mask of Mandalore. They're the clan leader of that clan becomes Mandalore. So obviously you could imagine everyone's kind of in a race to get it, and you kind of do feel some of that tension. But it is pretty interesting. I also thought it was really ironic with Revan walking right into a Mandalorian camp with nobody knowing that he's Revan.
Yeah.
And sitting in the corner and then talking in Mandalorian to them. They're like, oh, he knows Mandalorian. Like, who else would know Mandalorian besides a Mandalorian or a Jedi? Or, and no one would ever guess it's a Revan. And then, of course, Candace's extremely smart way of naming him Avner was just so dumb. He just rearranges his letters in his name. So they start calling him Avner. But eventually they do find the mask, but his wife, who is the leader of the clan, Candace's wife, who's the leader of the clan, kind of really misses Candace, and there's some, hinted at, well, it's not hinted at, it's obvious that Candace and his wife are sort of just, reminiscing and romancing with each other, just kind of making up time. But, so you could tell they totally miss each other. I don't know why. It still doesn't even make sense why Candace really left. I thought it was a pretty poor excuse. He just left because there was nothing. I didn't really get that, because if they're so especially because Candace is the one, we're so tied to family. He's like, well, I left because there was nothing.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, that doesn't really make sense
to
me. So they eventually find this cave. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It would have made more sense, like, for me it took years of playing the game to actually access Candace's side quest, but you haven't you? Like, where he finds that soldier named Joggy and goes back to face him in the desert of Tatooine in the original Knights of the Old Republic.
I can't remember.
Yeah, well, he's a...
No, I remember Knights of the Republic 2 stuff, but not Knights
well,
of the Republic
in the original game, he's approached... You know how everyone has their side quest where somebody meets them off the ship to tell them to go somewhere to complete their side quest? All your companion characters? Well, his is like a soldier that he made a tough call in the Mandalorian Wars and ended up saving some lives here, but decimating the contingent of forces under this guy's control, and he wanted sort of revenge and like to sort of have a duel out in the Dune Sea that would test Candace's honor, and if he didn't show up or he refused to fight, his honor would be it would just like sort of evaporate, and he'd have no status with the clans. And so Candace went back, and depending on your choices, it can unfold in different ways. But in any case, the events sort of leave Candace. I don't mean like he's evolved or something like that, but he's just changed, and he has needs that that can't really satisfy anymore. He sort of realized that there's something a little bit more to life than just fighting. So it would have made more sense for him to have left his family after that occurrence, or that kind of occurrence, but he didn't. Like, that happened later, like after he'd already joined up with Revan. So I see what you're saying. It didn't really make sense, like, why he left.
I see. Yeah. And yeah, I see what you're saying. I think like the whole thing with him though is he definitely changes. I mean, even at the end, towards the end of Knights of the Old Republic, I mean, he likes to talk about old war stories and stuff like that. But especially in this book, eventually, eventually Revan and Candace go off ahead, I guess, and they find the mask, and his wife finds out that it's Revan, and she's like, yeah, there's no way you're gonna leave this cave alive because we hate you. And Candace has to choose his side, and it's kind of an interesting conflict to see within a character that everyone really likes. There's this obvious internal, like, he loves his wife, he loves his clan, but he feels like in the long run, he's got to protect Revan because Revan knows more about the best way to protect the Mandalorian people and protect, just the space, from the Empire if they're going to invade again. So he sides with Revan, and he actually has to end up killing his own wife, which is, I mean, it's kind of sad, but I didn't really feel anything for her just because you're introduced to her so quickly. So that wasn't really that bad. But the cool part about all that though.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
It goes back to what you were saying earlier about like.
I was gonna finish it up.
Okay. It goes back to what you were saying earlier about character development. Like, she's introduced so quickly and leaves like not long later that we don't get enough time to really feel that sympathy for her. But that's all it is.
Yeah, she's a very minor character, I guess, but even Candace to a certain point is kind of a minor character in this novel, but I think that does set up a lot for the Old Republic as well, just because the cool part is, Candace decides to stay with his people, and obviously he becomes Mandalore. And now there's a very cool quote that everyone can quote from Candace. I'm not even sure if it was a quote before, and I guess it's just that I'm the new Mandalore the Preserver, which doesn't sound like a very Mandalore type of title, but it's because Candace is a lot different than them. Yeah, it does. It makes sense. Like, it makes perfect sense because of the context of what's happening. And it's cool. I mean, like, Candace to me is the coolest Mandalore ever. I mean, just because about his past, about who he is. Like, people have actually been able to, in the game, fight with Mandalore before he was Mandalore and actually know who this guy is, as opposed to, you'll read about other Mandalores on Wikipedia or something, or in some comic.
Yeah. And
it's like, oh yeah, he's cool and powerful, Mandalore the First, whatever, but no personal, feelings for him, really. But yeah, so I guess after this, after this point in the book, what happens after this point in the book? I'm thinking of the exile, but I'm guessing more... Yeah.
They find the mask. Revan gets some more memories. Remembers where a planet which he and Malik visited before the events of the first game, of course. And he sort of takes T3M4 along with him to investigate the next clue and leaves Canderous behind to do exactly what Canderous said he was going to do. And as I guess we should take this time to Revan goes off to visit that planet that we don't know much about, but then we cut away to the Darth Scourge side of the story, and he's sort of a Sith Lord who's trying to curry favor with this female Sith Inquisitor type called Darth Nyrus, I think was her name, and basically she's sending him off running various errands and doing things. And you're not really sure what her motives are. You're not sure if she's just manipulating him or what. But it all boils down to basically he's taken along with her on this mission to she's attempting to bring him into the fold of the plot by the current Dark Council of this time to assassinate or otherwise bring down the Sith Emperor, because they believe he's nuts and he has to be stopped, because there's being a Dark Lord of the Sith, and then there's just being like sort of an abomination, and they've decided that this guy needs to be taken down. And Darth Scourge is really the character the vehicle through which that information is conveyed, really. And he goes along with this woman to the same planet that Revan goes along to. So that's basically where we're at. So, do you want to discuss sort of the history of that world?
Yeah, I felt like that part of the book would have, I guess the best way to put it is, if that part of the story hadn't been put in, I probably would have not been as interested in the Emperor. But the way they define the Emperor is really kind of scary. And the way they do it is, with this world, there used to be this, like 1,000 years ago, that was just pretty normal world. I can't remember what the name is, but basically, I think it starts with a Q or something. But basically, this world, this Dark Lord ruled over it, and the Emperor was his son. And from an early age, they knew he was pretty powerful in the dark side or whatever. And of course, it was Empire-controlled planet. Very interesting. But just to kind of sum up the story, basically, when the kid, I don't even know if he was, I guess he was like teenager, maybe he was young man. He basically was just insanely obsessed with the dark side. Whatever, I don't even remember what the Emperor's name. I don't think they even mentioned what the Emperor's name is. They just call him the kid or the Emperor or whatever. Child. They
gave him a name, Vitiate or something like that. But I don't think he doesn't even go by that name. Like later, he's just the Emperor now, so we can just call him that. But
I think, and I think that was his dad's name, wasn't it? And then I guess he would also be Vitiate because it's his son. But
yeah. I should mention I didn't actually read the book. I listened to it on audiobook, so I might be pronouncing things wrong because I don't remember how anything was spelled. But
I probably have a higher chance of saying it wrong since I read it. So.
But he sort of he took over that world, and he sort of explored like the old Sith lore, like into Sith magic so extensively that he came up with like this ritual that basically wiped the planet of life completely, and it sort of like endowed him with incredible power in the process. And it, like, I don't know if there's a difference between what he did and what Darth Nihilus was doing. Like when Visas Mar describes what he did on the planet she came from, Qatar. I don't know if there's a difference or not, but did you detect a difference between the two?
I have a feeling, and that's why I was kind of comparing Darth Nihilus to him earlier, because I will say this is what Darth Nihilus should have been, because he was sort of a pushover in the game. I mean, he was pretty easy to beat in KOTOR 2. Of course, that's just a gameplay thing, but he just didn't seem that menacing as he should have been. Whereas this guy, to me, is what I wish I don't even know how to say his name, Nihilus, should have been, like, this monster. I mean, that's how Kreia even describes Darth Nihilus. He wasn't even a Sith, really. He was just this embodiment of the dark side, and it's proved just because, you know, that whole planet is void of the Force. I mean,
like, you can't even use the Force on it.
Because what he does, yeah, there's no, I hate to say this, but there's no midichlorians in that entire planet. I know. There's nothing alive there. That there's nothing there. No bugs, nothing. And it's because he absorbed, I don't know why I want to say, like, absorbed people's souls, but really just absorbed their life force, I guess. And
that's sort of implied.
It's always in him, so even... Yeah.
It's sort of implied that he did absorb...
But when he talks...
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Which, yeah, by the way, yeah, sorry about that. But basically, like, he sort of embodies people's spirits or their souls, and so they become a part of him. And it's like the idea that he's not even the person he was anymore. He's just like this destructive, you know, force of nature almost kind of thing, and he's completely, you know, beyond the realms of a normal living being. And I should say, like, I'm kind of making a plug for the audiobook. That section of the book where he speaks for the first time is really good, because they play like that creepy music where Qui-Gon was burned in episode 1, and it's like they add like an audio effect so it sounds like multiple people are talking at the same time. So if anyone's listening and wants to check that out, they should, just because it's cool. But yeah, he's just like, he's really just destructive and powerful and menacing. And basically, after the whole business with I'm sort of like skipping some of the unimportant details, but like the whole business with Nagasato and him losing the hyperspace war and the Jedi driving the Sith from Korriban in the first place, he sort of becomes like a rallying point. And I can't remember all the details behind that, but he tricked like a group of other Sith Lords to going to the planet where he came from or something like that, and then absorbed them. If I'm remembering that right.
Yeah.
And then he just there was no one else to like really oppose him, so he just sort of ruled his empire with like an iron fist, I guess, in the unknown regions. And as he had, you know, made plans to strike back at the Republic. Now, I guess going back to Revan, he is completely unprepared for, in case it wasn't obvious, the planet that Revan was going to is the same planet that this Sith Lord, or this Sith Emperor guy came from, where he caused all this mayhem. And he's like so unprepared for what he found there that he like crashes his ship, and I can't remember all the details, but he's apprehended by Darth Nihilus and Darth Scourge.
Well, he's in the solar... Yeah, he gets there at an unlucky time when Nihilus is actually showing Scourge why the Emperor is a monster, I think. And so Scourge is like, wow, you gotta be kidding me. And so, like, right when they're about to leave, just coincidentally, of course, like in all Star Wars, Darth Revan... I just call him Darth Revan, dang it. Revan sort of just comes into the system, and they're like, holy crap, if someone sees that we've been here, that's not good for us. So they capture him, and then they're like, oh my gosh, that is Revan. And they apprehend him and take him to their prison, which ends part 1 of the book. So, pretty interesting.
And then that's sort of where the Jedi exile comes in, because she resolves to find out what happened to Revan, because like 3 years pass by after Revan left. Bastila's got a toddler, Revan's of course, and she doesn't really, she, you know, wants to find Revan herself, of course, but at the same time she realizes she can't leave her son behind or take him along with her, so the exile goes out to find him. And at the same time, Revan's been spending time in custody, in Sith custody. Darth Nihilus lost interest in him because she couldn't get anywhere with him using interrogators, but Scourge is sort of fascinated by him and tries to learn sort of histories or mysteries about the stuff that he doesn't have access to, having only ever lived in like the Sith Empire. He finds Revan sort of an enigmatic character, or person that he can't really say why he's so fascinated by him, but he is. And so he continues to visit him, I guess, even though he doesn't really need to.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what Revan was doing for 3 years.
Yeah. And just a quick note, that whole sequence is between the interaction between him and Revan is really interesting because, from one aspect, he thinks he's manipulating Revan into telling him his secrets, but at the same time, Revan is manipulating him into getting to trust him more.
Right.
So eventually, he can use him to get out of jail,
Right.
if he can. So I thought that whole thing was. I mean, it's only explained like a couple times. I mean, it's pretty short. Like the second part of the book is only like, I don't know, like a third of what the first part of the book is. So a lot of like stuff moves pretty quickly at the end of the book. I don't want to say it's rushed, but it moves pretty quickly and actually true Drew Carpathian style, which is like kind of start out slow, build up characters, and then just run with it. You know, when you get to a certain part of the story where things start to heat up. So, but yeah.
Yeah. And there's a bit of business where the exile infiltrates the Sith Empire and learns a bit about the culture. Before that, she visited that world that the Sith Empire or Emperor came from, and along with, was it T3? Yeah. M4 was with her, and I can't remember. It's been like almost like a month since or not a month, but it's been a couple weeks since I listened to the book, so I can't really remember exactly what happened there. But she basically realized exactly, how bad the Sith Emperor must be, or like something terrible
what happens
happened
is
here, right?
She picks up Revan's trail because Canderous is the only person that knows where he went. So she talks to Canderous, who's Mandalore for 3 years by that time, and Mandalore says, well, he went to this planet, and after he went to that planet, he just disappeared. So she goes to the planet, she gets on the planet, and then, of course, just like Scourge and also Revan, she realizes, what the heck, there's no force here. And then I think earlier we were talking about how that part's really tense, where she's like, what the heck? And she feels like she's going to die or go insane because there's no force, and she's a force user. She's so used to breathing and living in it. And I guess what she tries to do is find out what the heck happened there by finding some documents in the Senate or in the government official buildings, and then she finds out of she basically what she does is she gets just like some data pad or something, just something that has a whole bunch of data on it, and she just tries to get the heck off that planet really quickly. And then from the government record, she discovers the location of Dromon Kos, which is interesting. I thought this was really interesting, actually, was how Dromon Kos was discovered by the Emperor, and how he actually timed his plan. Do you remember this part at all? When it explains in history, it's more of a history lesson.
It's been a couple weeks since I listened to it. I can't remember exactly. That was like sort of like an ancestral home, like older than Korriban, wasn't it?
Yeah, Dromon Kos and Korriban are like, and maybe a little bit of Tython, are kind of like ancient dark force, I guess you could say, homeland. Not necessarily just Sith, Korriban is totally Sith written all over it, but just really strong in the dark side of the Force. And for the longest time, the Emperor, before he actually decided to eat everybody in their Force, he was looking for the location of Dromon Kos. So he commissioned a whole bunch of Sith scientists, I guess, of the Force to find a probable hyperspace route, I guess, to Dromon Kos. And then this is the part I thought was really cool, was the whole point of that was, okay, so now I'm going to destroy this whole planet. And then what he does is he ends up blaming it on the Republic and saying, we got to retreat, everyone should follow me because I'm so powerful. Let's go to this place that I found by myself called Dromon Kos. And that's how he actually got to be Emperor. He tricks actually the entire Empire into thinking that he is their only hope into getting away from the Republic and being destroyed. And so he actually manipulates the whole Empire. Really interesting.
Yeah, he elevates his image that way, and he creates like a stage for all this propaganda that's anti-Republic to really get his people like generationally indoctrinated behind this idea that the Republic's no good and that eventually we are going to strike back. Even though that they don't really know anything about it. But so I do remember I needed somebody to refresh my brain, but that was a really good part of the book.
Yeah.
But basically, she, the exile, makes her way to Drummond Koss, and she has to do like this investigation using another character we haven't really talked about, one of Nyrus's little minions, this guy named Setchel, I think, to track down Darth Scourge, because he's one of the guys who, it's sort of coincidental, but I guess it's just one of those things. It didn't really bother me like in Darth Bane, where Lucia showed up in book 3, where she hadn't had any part of the story since book 1, and even there she was really a minor character. So it wasn't like a ridiculous coincidence, but at the same time it is there. But basically she meets up with Scourge, and the reason why he's astonished that she's there is because Revan had bluffed his way into making Scourge believe that the Jedi were on their way to rescue him, and that he figured that out through Force prophecy, and that sort of bluff and the fact that the exile's timely arrival tricks, or at least I shouldn't say that it tricks Scourge into believing Revan, but it solidifies in his mind that there's more to what Revan's saying than he previously thought, and so he starts putting more stock in what he was saying and realizing that this may be the key that he needs to progress his plans to take down the Emperor.
Yeah, for sure.
And
definitely.
I can't really remember.
I just want to
go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick note. Just the whole paranoia thing with the Sith we kind of talked about earlier. I thought the only thing that kind of annoyed me about it, actually kind of annoyed me a lot, was why in the world would a Dark Lord be concerned about power and position of like a servant that's not a Force user at all, and also a captain? Like, that didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah,
because he's always constantly trying to win Nerys's favor, and that didn't make sense to me. Like, why would she care? And I mean, I guess they're her little I don't know, I want to say like puppets, if that makes sense, because they're just like her little toys that she can send on little missions and stuff. But
well, she said that
why would she value them over a Sith Lord? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
The only thing that I can think of, I don't know why the soldier, the security officer, because he was barely a character in the book, so that one I don't have an excuse for. But with Setchel, it was established that Setchel had brains, and that he was able to, he was good at what he did, like trafficking information and other such things, and good on breaking into facilities, and he was a good tech operative. But the thing about him, the fact that he was so minuscule in the Force, and I'm not sure that the book said this explicitly, but it's just like what I would guess, is that because he's so insignificant with his Force power, he's not as strongly watched as she is, because she's on the Dark Council, so she's a prominent member, so she can use him to sort of like operate in the dark without being noticed by her other contemporaries and equals and colleagues on the council or something like that. So she needs somebody so low in status to be her little chess piece or something like that. But I'm not sure if that's like a great excuse. That's just what that's just like the way it came off to me.
Yeah. Just real quick note off that is the whole reason why she has Lord Scourge, like, that also didn't make sense to me too. She hires Scourge, whatever. She asked for Scourge to protect her, but the real reason why is because she wants him to do investigating for her and do her dirty work, and then eventually convince him to help her. But in the end, she just wants to use him. So
yeah, I don't know why there was the manipulation behind that. Like when she sent him off on that assassination mission. I can't remember the name of the Sith Lord or why. It was like one of the earlier parts in the books, but
Zedrix.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, the reason why... Well, this is the thing I also actually kind of liked, was what was actually going on was... What Scourge figured out was, yeah, they were against the Emperor, but in real life, they all knew there was no way they were going to be able to defeat him. So, instead of actually, planning to overthrow the Emperor. They were just using it for their own gain
Yeah.
to get higher and more favor from the Emperor on the Dark Council. So, like, in Neris's point of view, she was like, look, this is what we're going to do. Zedrix, he's not even powerful at all. Just go kill him. And he was, like, the oldest guy in the council, so he was pretty weak. Intelligent, but weak in the Force, because he's also several hundred years old. So, she sends, whatever his face is, Scourge, to go kill him, because she's making up all this crap about him going to rat her out or something. I don't even know. And then in the end, he realizes all she's really doing is manipulating him, so that way she can get more power. She could care less about him. And that's why eventually, kind of after this, Lord Scourge actually decides to work with the Exile and Revan to defeat the Emperor, which is like the weirdest twist of events. But it is pretty interesting, I guess.
I liked that aspect of it.
I did like it.
I did. I wasn't expecting it, obviously, but because I like how Drew was able to make sense out of their arrangement in the first place, because when you're dealing with Jedi in general, especially ones with histories like Revan in the Exile, the idea that they would ever really trust a Sith, like to follow through with his promises, is sort of like, it has the potential to just come off as like completely ludicrous. But the reasoning behind it was because the reader also knew that Scourge, at various points, did intend to keep his word, not for their reasons, but because he was against the Emperor himself as well.
Yeah, and at the same time, I don't think we've even said the Exile's name once, but Mitra Search or something?
I only remember her first
last
name,
is, but
which is Mitra.
Yeah, like, she doesn't trust him at all, but the only reason why she ends up trusting him is because Revan says it's alright, and the only reason why Revan trusts that he'll at least do what he says he'll do is because he spent 3 years manipulating him and talking to him in his jail cells. So it's not like, oh, they just kind of met up and they're like, we both want to kill someone. I mean, I always like that whole, the enemy of my enemies is my friend. Like, that's pretty much what it is. But it's not like just, oh yeah, that's what it is. It's actually built up to pretty decently, I thought. So
yeah, I agree.
I thought it was pretty cool.
And I can't, I don't know if a whole lot else happened in between them joining up in this, but basically, Scourge decides to take a bold step. He addresses the Sith Emperor himself, which he doesn't really have the authority to do that. He's not a member of the Dark Council, and so it's forbidden to him technically. And so he runs the risk of being killed on sight just because of that.
Yeah.
But and one of the more interesting things about his character is that he himself, this sort of lowly peon of the Sith Emperor, barely like a Darth, but he's like a newly anointed Darth, it said at the beginning, was able to manipulate the Sith Emperor himself, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I like that too. I thought for sure the Sith Emperor would be like, oh, I know you're lying, but he, like, to me, for some reason, I felt like the Sith Emperor would be a little bit smarter, but at the same time, I realized, I forgot that, unless you're like in episode 3 or something, people can't just read your mind just because they have the Force. So, it made more sense to me. And, I mean, like you were saying, he goes before the Sith Emperor, and the whole point of this is he exposes Neris's and treachery, and because of that, he's like, if you're telling the truth, then you're going to be rewarded. The Emperor basically says in a very scary voice, and if not, I'm going to torture you to death. And so, he's taking a huge risk there, but the point of it is to distract the Emperor from what he's really planning, which is to team up with Revan, and, actually, for him, and so him and the Exile can break Revan out, and then afterwards team up together and destroy the Emperor. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, and basically everything went according to plan. Neris was killed by she engaged the Exile and Scourge in combat, but she was, I don't remember if she was like winning, but she was definitely putting up a fight, and she was likely to kill either one of them if they were on their own, and I think they were, just the fact that they were teaming up is what kept them alive. And Revan... Oh, I guess we should talk about this. When the exile went off on her journey, Basila gave her a package to deliver to Revan, and it was his old mask.
Oh yeah.
And that she gave her giving him his mask is what like bestows all his past memories, like everything, to him all at once.
Yeah.
So he has access to like powers he'd forgotten and Sith knowledge he'd forgotten, and he calls himself Revan Reborn, I think. And he
I kind of saw that coming though, like I see what he was trying to do, but that whole thing right there to me was just like, oh yeah, he's gonna get the mask back, guys. You know it. He's getting the mask. Like I just kind of felt like the whole time, like yeah, he's gonna get the mask. Although what it actually symbolizes is pretty awesome. I don't know if you were gonna get to that, but just the whole mask idea behind Revan makes him very just like fascinates me in the sense that like first of all, he puts on the mask and like you're saying, he calls himself Revan Reborn. It's something he wore kind of when he was trouble. I don't want to say like trouble because partially when he was more of a zealous sort of patriot. I don't know how to sort of explain him before he turned into a Dark Lord.
Yeah.
And then after he became a Dark Lord, and then when he became Jedi, he didn't wear the mask, obviously, because he didn't know who he was for a while. But the part to me that I really liked, maybe my favorite part in the entire book actually, is when he's watching the video of his kid, and he takes off his mask and he starts crying. And the reason why I like that was because the whole point of Revan is not how powerful he is, but the choices he's made in his life and his redemption and the humanness he represents. I think that's why a lot of people can relate to him, because first of all, you play like halfway through the game of Knights of the Old Republic not knowing you're Revan, making all the choices probably that if you're playing like you would making the real choices you would in real life, then you feel like, yeah, this is what I do. And then you find out you're Revan, you're like, well, I'm not a bad person, I don't always choose light side choices, but I'm not a bad person, And to me, it's like, that's kind of what Revan's like. He's the most humanistic character that I've witnessed in all of, maybe besides like Han Solo or something like that, in all of Star Wars. And that's why I really like that moment, because it's like, he's not perfect, and that's what I like about Revan. I don't want him to be perfect. I want him to be flawed, and I want him to be someone I can relate to. And that's probably my favorite moment of the book, which takes place right after he gets the mask.
But like he puts the mask on, calls himself Revan Reborn, which also goes back to like when you think about it, during the Mandalorian Wars, that was the Revan as the Jedi Knight, and then like after that, after he gets corrupted, he's Revan the Dark Lord of the Sith. And you're not really sure what kind of mindset he was in, because we didn't actually visit the character during that time in his life. And then when we were first introduced to him as players, we don't even know we're Revan, then we find out we are. But then he's like got amnesia and stuff. And then when he puts on the mask, he's like come full circle, so he's who he was again. He remembers his life and everything like that. And so it makes him like a complete. That was like his arc right there. Like, so I understood. It was a little cheesy to say I am Revan Reborn, but it literally that is what he is. That it makes sense, because he's not like. There's even like dialogue options in the original game, where after you find out who you are, you say you have the option of saying, well, I'm not Revan anymore. I'm this guy, because I don't even remember that stuff. But now he is Revan. Like he can't. It's not. There's not like a separation of his life before and who he is now. It's all like one story. And he acknowledges it. But so I like that part. But basically what I'm getting at is he gets the mask on, goes out with his newfound knowledge and everything else, and wipes away Darth Nihilus like she's not even there. And he and Scourge and the Exile devise like their plan, which is basically just to sort of like storm Emperor's palace.
Just to surprise, I think, just to take the Emperor by surprise, and because they figure that most of the troops are away from the temple, or whatever the heck it is, wherever the Emperor sits in that one chamber, which was also kind of cool and creepy, and only protected by I mean, the only way I could ever picture are like those guards that guard the Emperor in, you know, the original movie.
Yeah, again,
and also
like
the red guys. I can't remember what they're called.
Yeah, mostly they're like doormen, because it's not like he needs protection. They're just there to admit you, like if you have status or something like that. But you know, they sort of get through those guys, and Revan, the Exile, and Scourge, and of course T3M4 make their stand against the Sith Emperor, and not everything goes according to plan there.
No, I mean, and this is the twist in the book, so I'm guessing if you've been listening to this, which it's already been like over an hour, you're not going to mind the major spoiler of the book, which is, in the end, Scourge decides... Well, first of all, he has a whole bunch of... They're all fighting the Emperor. The Emperor is pretty much overpowering them. There's even a part where the Emperor's right about to kill Revan, and then T3M4, which is a really sad part, actually. Kind of made me sad. T3M4 uses his typical flamethrower he sprayed... I thought that part was kind of like cute and just like sad. I'm like, dude, you're so dead. Don't do it. And so he sprays the Emperor with some fire. And like during this whole time, you know, during this whole fight, in my head, I'm envisioning, you know, the sort of the Duel of the Fates music.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, don't kill him. And then of course he electrocutes, and he just totally makes T3M4 explode. Which I'm guessing Drew Carpathian must have been listening to one of our podcasts when we talked about how obvious T3M4 was going to be in this. And he's just like, screw you guys, I'm destroying him. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's still possible that he has his memory core somewhere. Someone took it from the temple, but it's pretty sad. So T3M4 dies. Revan's pretty much about to die. The Exile and Scourge are about to fight, but then while Revan's laying on the floor and they're sort of in the middle of this fight, Scourge has like a million different predictions of the outcome of the battle, and this part was pretty cool. I mean, because I think it's because he's sort of like, he's really dark side, but he's almost like he's kind of lessened his faith in the Sith a little bit just because of the Emperor. Sort of, he hates the Emperor. I mean, he wants to kill him. I mean, he's still definitely a Sith without a doubt, but he has all these different pictures of the outcome of the battle, which Revan warned him that just because you see a different outcome, it doesn't mean it's necessarily true. And it's just one of the outcomes that could happen if you make a certain decision. And in the past, he had a vision that all of them were going to die if they challenged the Emperor. So he has like a whole bunch, like a thousand different visions in like 1 second, and then he chooses one of the visions to sort of follow. And of course, that vision is to kill the Exile and let Revan die.
Yeah.
And
because he envisions a future powerful Jedi Knight facing the Emperor and becoming victorious.
Yes.
So he literally like stabs the Exile in the back, figuratively and literally. She dies.
Yeah.
And Revan's like so shocked by that he's not paying attention, and then he gets electrocuted into submission by the Emperor. And as a reward for seemingly remaining loyal to the Sith Empire, Scourge is not killed. And didn't he ask Scourge to explain himself, like his actions?
Yeah, he's like, explain this, and then he makes up this excuse that, look, I knew the only way...
I can't remember what he said.
Yeah, he says the only way that anyone was going to kill Revan was if I brought him to... Like, there's no one else that would be powerful enough to kill Revan, he said. And he said he knew that Neros was a traitor.
Okay.
He made up this stuff how he just found out as well that Neros was holding her in the sail, so he convinced Revan that he would help. And he says the only person powerful enough, so I gained their trust. All this bullcrap that the Sith typically lie about. I don't know why. They still listen to each other. So... And then, of course, you know, the Emperor's like, good job, Anakin, but actually Lord Scourge, and he, actually, that whole scene reminded me of Episode 6 with Luke Skywalker getting electrocuted and Darth Vader just sitting there, and then the Emperor, I mean, I was guessing in the end the Emperor was probably going to ask Darth Vader to kill him, you know, kill Luke Skywalker, but it was just, like, sort of the same thing, but anti, you know, like, sort of just the anti-version of that, and, it was interesting, and of course... He doesn't kill the Exile and decide to turn against him because he decides to side with the Emperor. He decides to do it because he doesn't see an outcome which they could win right then. Besides Revan's excuse, which was, if we die, at least we delay the Emperor, because the Emperor will be wondering how in the world I broke free of his control, and because he's really patient, because he's really old, and he's waiting to, destroy the galaxy when he really can, when he's powerful enough, and he's thinking and being really patient about it. This will delay him from doing that, and it will give, people more time to prepare for it. So Lord Scorch says, well, why don't we take that instead of everyone dying, make him think about it, while also making me his most trusted, loyal follower, as he would
advisor, enforcer.
Yeah. The Emperor's... I kept on saying the Emperor's hand, but obviously that doesn't make sense. But pretty much that, except way more powerful. And, so...
Yeah, because he's actually made immortal himself.
Yes, so...
Yeah, I like what happened to him, though, where they explain that, you get immortality, but it's like at the worst possible cost ever.
Yeah, that, and even,
it's like...
Yeah, before we get into that part, though, I just want to say that he doesn't kill Revan. I don't know if we emphasize that, because...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Emperor says, kill Revan right now, and he's like, okay. So he's about to kill Revan, he says, don't actually kill him, I just want to make sure that you're not betraying me and you're not lying about this crap. So, what he says is the reason why is because he wants to basically hook up Revan and some type of thing that's going to... I don't even know what it was, like some pod where he's literally drawing from Revan's power, because Revan is still... He's still super powerful, and he's powerful enough for the Emperor to take an interest in feeding off of him for force, but also because he basically wants to file through Revan's mind, and he wants to file through Revan's mind and figure out what actually happened, because he doesn't know either. I mean, he doesn't know what happened between the Mandalorians and Revan and Malak trying to take over the Republic. He has no clue. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was
he's probably wondering if Malak's still alive, so...
Yeah, and it's also the fact that he sticks Revan in like a stasis chamber, so Revan's kept alive, basically. Yeah. So, I mean, you can make like broad predictions that something involving Revan himself, like whether a spirit or like a sign of him, will be uncovered in the game. But like as the story progresses, but because that's what I would guess. I can't imagine why they wouldn't like actually finish his character's story unless they were going to do it in the game.
Oh yeah.
So
I think it's pretty obvious. Just a quick note on that. BioWare already commented and said that in the game you will find out the fate of Revan. Okay. Which, based off of reading this book, I'm feeling that if you're dark side or light side, you're going to have two different decisions, two different things that you'll be able to do with Revan. I'm just guessing this because it just makes sense to me. But also just a quick note on that before we get into the whole internal life thing, which I also thought was really interesting. Even though the Emperor is filing through his mind.
Right.
Once again, proving how awesome Revan is because of his intelligence, Revan at the same time is implanting ideas. It's like Inception. It's awesome. He's implanting ideas into the Emperor's mind without him even noticing about, oh, maybe I should delay this, and maybe like feeding the Emperor false information. Like,
he's basically,
it's cool to me because...
Yeah, he's basically feeding doubt into his mind, like saying, well, there was this, and Malak and I, escaped your control, so who knows how many others could do so, and just things like that. That where the Emperor was sort of arrogant before and hadn't really come across people who were so strong in the Force, he didn't really know what he was up against with this Republic, and like so many other Jedi are there. Who knows how many of them have this potential and so on. So he's able to stall his eventual attack. Which then leads us to
and that's also one of my favorite parts in the book.
I like that. And then that leads us to the fate of Darth Scourge, who of course I'm sure will play a role in the game too, considering he's made immortal, so he'll pop up somewhere. And basically, like, the Emperor performs like this ritual which transforms Scourge into basically what he is, not as powerful because he hasn't, sucked the life out of millions of beings or anything like that, but somebody who will go on to live forever. And basically what it does is like it makes you, it's like every inch of your body is covered, is like, you've got like intense pain going on, and it doesn't stop. And basically, like, the only way you get used to it is throughout the decades and centuries, you'll just become deafened to it, and you won't feel anything at all. And so it's you're immortal, but it's like the worst cost
Yeah.
ever. It's like, is life even worth living with that kind of limitation?
Yeah, I loved
Yeah.
that too. I loved that whole thing where Scourge is like, I mean, first of all, Scourge he didn't want eternal life. He's just doing it because that's how he's
Yeah.
going to destroy the Emperor. But that whole thing where he gets eternal life and he's just writhing in pain on the ground, and he's just like, when is this going to end? And the Emperor, who's, I mean, the way they describe the Emperor in this book is a mixture of, to me, he's like a mixture of Darth Nihilus and
Right.
the Emperor Palpatine. Just because, like, his personality to me, like, every single time besides his voice, but just, like, the way he comes across is more like the Emperor. So if you could imagine the Emperor saying, yeah, that's never going to end, and you're just going to have to become numb to it, because and I mean, I guess you could, even for a Sith, because Darth Bane was kind of similar, like, he had those obelisks on him, or whatever they were, and they were always painful, but he actually fed off of that pain, because he was so dark side, and so without a doubt, I mean, because of this really interesting turn of events at the end of the book, I have no doubt that I don't think it matters what class you are, but somehow you're going to have to fight with Scourge, because I mean, every single character in the game, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate because we talk about this realistically, like, there's no way a smuggler is going to be able to defeat the Emperor, or something like that. But of course, this game, it's a game, I guess. But if you want to play true to the actual story, more realistically, if you're going to be a Sith or a Jedi, you're going to have to somehow work with Scourge, and somehow you're going to have to get in contact with Revan. It would just make sense to me, and I'm guessing what's going to happen is, with Revan, because the Emperor feeds off of him.
Yeah.
I know that you've read Harry Potter. You've read Harry Potter,
Yeah.
so you know what I'm talking about with the Horcruxes and stuff like that. He's probably like one
Something
of those
like
things,
Yeah.
So,
but also, like you
just how
said,
I'm
like you
thinking
sort of
about
just
it.
alluded to
Yeah.
it, like the idea of Scourge is that, like, you're either gonna have to fight him or maybe work with him. Again, like he tried to work with Revan. It's like, I like the idea that there are Sith involved in this new timeline where, the Emperor is definitely like the big boss, but he's not everybody is blindly loyal to him. There are people within his own ranks who are working against him. And I don't know if there's, like, we can maybe make like some closing remarks on this book, but I wonder, have you read Deceived yet?
I actually ordered it a couple days ago, so it should be coming soon. But I know I've discussed that with you and accidentally guessed some major plot points. So
I mean, I couldn't really confirm. Yeah, I couldn't really confirm anything like that. But and it's also like with Malgus, it's like for different reasons. But he's not really in line with the Emperor either. But again, that's like 300 years later after these events. So it's different. I'm not going to like spoil that to you or for you, and I'm not sure like I know what his goals are. But the whole idea, and I guess it's going to have to be like revealed in the game, is that I'm not really sure what the Emperor's motives are in the current timeline, because it's like you attack the Republic and you take them like by storm, and they're not prepared for you, and you just sort of decimate their forces and the Jedi temples in ruins and stuff. Why then call the Treaty of Coruscant and let your enemy regroup?
I wonder. I wonder if that might have something to do with Revan, just because he's planting doubt in his mind, and I'm guessing that if Revan's been alive that long, just doing the same thing, he probably knows his way through the Emperor's mind, and
maybe
I don't know. I mean,
that was like
I'd agree.
That was like the early question that popped up in my mind, because it's not like the whole driving force behind Darth Malgus. There are other things to his story, of course, but he raises that question too, because he's the one who destroyed the Jedi Temple in the Deceived trailer. So it's like, to him, offering like this strange peace treaty, it was like he didn't understand it. But he's also not even like, he's kind of like Scourge in that he's powerful and he carries out the business of the Empire, but he's not on the Dark Council, so he's not privy to all the information. So maybe that just hasn't been revealed yet, but I just wondered how far you'd gotten with the other Old Republic novels. But I'm glad you'll soon be able to read Deceived.
I mean, I got pretty far in the game playing as an Inquisitor. I got almost to level 20, and a lot of stuff. You learn a lot of stuff in the game. I mean, it's not like you're just running around doing crap. You're actually learning about the story, just like you should be, like in Knights of the Old Republic. So, yeah, I definitely need to read those. I don't know if I'll read Fatal Alliance, but I'll definitely be reading Deceived soon when it comes. So
Don't, yeah. I wouldn't bother reading Fatal Alliance. Just, I've already talked about that, but to me, I think that that's a waste of money. Still.
Yeah.
But, so I guess just in, like, closing remarks for this book, not my favorite Carpesian book. At the same time, I really enjoyed it. If I was gonna put it on, like, a scale of 1 to 10, probably, like, I don't know, like a 7 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It's not great. It's not like amazing or anything like that, like Darth Bane and so on and so forth. But it's definitely readable, you know, and it gives a lot of important history. And his writing style does still appeal to me. And if I had to stack it with the other Old Republic novels, the other 2, so there's 3 of them now. Didn't like Fatal Alliance at all. It's like by default it's better than that. And I think I still liked Deceived more, just because the story was more coherent. There was more freedom with those characters. And there was just so much information that had to be exchanged in this novel that even a writer like Carpesian can't do that as, like, I don't know what the word, ideally, but it's still it's effective. It's emotionally engaging. The characters are true to themselves. I had a conversation with another guy a while ago who hadn't read the book, but he was saying, I don't really know how I feel about, like, Revan going off and doing this or whatever, because he's not going to live happily ever after with Bastila and all that. I was like, yeah, but he's Revan. It's like he saved the galaxy, so it's like, is he gonna trade like security for his family and everything else for domestic bliss, and, like, just ignore what's out there?
Yeah, the best stories, though, and this is something that frustrates me, is, like, it seems like, do people, like, live in Disneyland or something? Like, the best stories
there you go.
aren't the ones that have a happy ending. It's the ones that talk about things that are tough, that have a point to them, that the plots challenge the whether it be the reader, the listener, the viewer, you know, philosophically or whatever, religiously, philosophically, anything, you know, to challenge themselves and think about something. And I always think about, just personally for me, like, one of my favorite series of all time. Like, I do like anime, but just this series itself has nothing to do with anime. It's just, it intrigues me so much, which is Ghost in the Shell. And I mean, the whole thing is, it's just about what determines what a human being is, or what is a soul, because the whole thing is about cyborgs and robots, and how, you know, when robots become super intelligent, and, like, stuff like that is more interesting. And there's no, like, happy ending, you know, always to every single story. I know it's Star Wars, I get it, okay, I know people want that, but when people do something different, like Drew Carpation, and they write a novel like, you know, the Darth Bane series, and then you see a character that you're rooting for but isn't good, and there's no happy ending to that book whatsoever, it's well written. That's a good story, and that's something I want to read.
Yeah, I mean, just like in closing remarks, like, that's life. You know, there are happy moments and there are tragic moments, and, you know, that's just the way it is. And those themes of, like, what makes a human, or a soul, they're like classic things, like, you know, Blade Runner and so on and so forth. And you get things like the reimagination of Battlestar Galactica. That series was all about that, and there's just something really compelling about that. And as far as, like, happy endings go, people have to remember, like, I think a lot of people forget, like, in hindsight, when they don't really realize this, because it's seen as, like, a kid's movie and something that people remember fondly from when they're a kid. The original Star Wars, like, back when it was just called Star Wars, A New Hope, it's a dark, gritty movie. They blow up a whole planet of people. Luke's family is, like, burned alive. They kill Jawas and everything else like that. Yeah, they saved the galaxy. But
Original trilogy is an adult movie. It's not. That's why kids can't enjoy it, because there's stuff in it that you have to really think about. It's not like a whole bunch of people who have sticks hitting each other really cool. It's not. That's not what makes it cool, and that's what they miss the point of what Star Wars is about. And then you get these Star Trek people who come over and say Star Wars is stupid because it has nothing philosophically in it. It's like, that's because you watch the prequels. The original movies are great. They're fantastic. I like Star Trek 2. I've seen some of Battlestar Galactica. I mean, those are all science fiction. Of course, it's not just that, but if anything that's mentally challenging, I'll probably enjoy it. If it's just like something they throw on screen and they title it Clone Wars and they have 50 million different clone troopers and they're trying to sell that's I don't know, I'm getting off topic, but you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you mean. So like, just in closing remarks, not every story has to have a happy ending. Not every story is going to have a happy ending. If you can accept that fact, and I think that the Revan novel won't be so outlandish to you. I definitely feel it's worth reading, especially if you are actually interested in the MMO. It doesn't screw up the continuity at all. It doesn't change the entire motives for characters that we've grown to know and love from the past and previous games and comics and so forth. It's fine. Either read it or don't. Personally, it has my recommendation if you like Drew Karpyshyn, and especially if you plan on playing the MMO. But that's basically all I have to say on it. And I'll turn it over to Jake for closing remarks.
And just real quickly, I just want to kind of compare this also to some other books. If I was going to rate this book on Amazon, I gave it like 5 out of 5 stars, and the only reason I really did that was because there was something like 1 out of 5 stars. I said, come on, that's not fair. And so I just try to make a point. Yeah, it wasn't really like, I wouldn't give the book 10 out of 10. To me, I might give it like an 8 out of 10, just because I enjoyed it. But if I was going to compare it to some books, because I haven't read the other Deceived novels, I'd compare it to, like, if you liked Shadowhunter, Darth Maul Shadowhunter, you'd probably, I think it's about at the same level as that book. Very well written, just maybe, just for some reason, there's just something about it that doesn't ring as, I guess as much as like a Shatterpoint or a, whatever, a novel like Darth Bane or the Thrawn series. So I definitely agree with you on that review. Somewhere between the 7 and 8 sounds about right for this book. Definitely worth reading, especially if you're a Knights of the Old Republic fan. You want to know what happens. It does that right, I think. So yeah.
Okay, so thanks everyone for watching, and check out Jake's channel if you haven't already, Tuggiegamereivews on YouTube. This is Matt and Jake signing off. May the Force be with you all.